evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Ossining special meeting and Town Hall meeting for June 19th, 2018. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm looking for the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilwoman Feldman?
Present.
Councilman Wiltshire?
Present.
Councilwoman DeTore?
Present.
Councilwoman Shaw?
Present.
Supervisor Levenberg?
Here. Okay, so we are starting off with a public hearing about our CDBG grant applications. Would you like to read anything, Ms. Alhash, for
Sure.
this public hearing?
So the Town and Village Board held a joint session last Wednesday in this very room. And for purposes of the public hearing, we have been told that the names of all 4 applications that the town wishes to pursue need to be read into the record. Submissions for the 2019-2021 CDBG grant program to the Westchester Urban County Consortium. Project 1, Community Center Improvement Initiative, Kitchen Renovations for Senior Nutrition Program. Project number 2, Bus for Senior Nutrition Program. Project number 3, Lewis Angle Park Beach and Playground Improvements. Project number 4, Lewis Angle Park Performance Space and Comfort Station Relocation and Improvements.
Is there anybody here who has come to address the board at this public hearing? Hearing no one. Are there any comments from the town board? Hearing none. May I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do you have to do a roll call vote for public hearing? Okay, just double checking. Okay, wonderful. So we are in good shape then to put in place these applications for our community development block grants, and we look forward to being participating in the Westchester Urban County Consortium for the first time in many years, and we are hopeful that we will be successful in obtaining some federal dollars that are coming down through the county for these projects, one of which is going to be done in conjunction with the community center upgrades that the village is also planning to make. So look forward to that. And if you have any questions or need further information about any of these applications, please feel free to reach out to me or my staff in the supervisor's office. Okay, so next up, I think I have some announcements. Where are we going next? So I'm excited to announce that our Ossining Waterfront Concert Series kicks off this Friday night, June 22nd, with Roadhouse Roosters. And Tom, I have something for you to zoom in on, so get ready. I have an awesome poster. This is the Roadhouse Rooster poster. And we thank Frank Sheridan for doing such an excellent job designing our advertising for this concert series. We're also thankful to our sponsors, the Westchester Bank, Mike Briscoe Music, Greater Hudson Bank, and Sterling National Bank for their sponsorship of the summer concert series this year, which has enabled us to have a longer series. I have one more for you. This is actually the poster for the entire series, which, as I mentioned, kicks off this Friday night and then continues next Friday. And then our fireworks this year are going to be July 3rd, which is Tuesday night. And for that, we have John Bates Band. This year, we decided to really take a good look at all of our local talent. So almost all of the bands that you all hear performing at the waterfront this summer are very talented Ossining or Ossining connected bands. So as I had mentioned, Roadhouse Roosters this week, out after curfew the following week, John Bates Band for the fireworks. Then we have Soul Project, Taj Weeks, Jigsaw, KJ Denner, Powderfinger, Mike Briscoe Band, DJ Catch One, Sundad, and we finish off with Culture Hound at 7 p.m. and Old Mill Singers at 8. All of our concerts start at 7 unless I indicated otherwise. One of them is a Thursday night, which is August 2nd. And other than that, everything is a Friday night for the summer. And John Bates Band for the fireworks is going to start at 7:30 and play a little bit play before the fireworks and then after the fireworks. So please do join us down by the waterfront. Gyro Uno is going to be there for all of the concert series. Then we'll have lots of food trucks for the fireworks, and bring with you something comfortable to sit on, like a blanket or a lawn chair. And if you don't want Gyro Uno, bring your own food from home. Congratulations to all of the high school graduates and all those moving up to middle school. I know that Austin High School had their graduation and their AMD moving up ceremony this past weekend. We wish all the students well and a very happy summer. Please remember that school is out at the end of this week, so drive carefully. Our spray park is now on summer hours, which is from 12 to 6 daily, except on days of extreme heat when we open at 11 and close at 7. Remember, you have to push the button to get the water to start spraying. Today, June 19th, is Grievance Day. The Board of Assessment Review will be meeting until 9 p.m. in the boardroom at 16 Croton Avenue. If you plan to review a property assessment, make sure you go prepared with information in hand for them to review. St. Anne's Parish Festival starts tonight, Tuesday, June 19th, on the grounds of St. Anne's School on Eastern Avenue, and will run every night from 6 to 11 p.m. until Sunday, June 24th. Come for the games and rides, but stay for the food, featuring St. Anne's multicultural community with Italian, Portuguese, Latin American, and Filipino specialties. Make Music Day is June 21st. I believe that is Thursday. Free events all over Austin and Briarcliff mark the summer solstice with a drum circle from 4 to 5 p.m. in front of Mike Briscoe Music at 144 Croton Avenue, and Mike Briscoe Music has taken the lead on this initiative. Mind, Body, Spirit Austin continues this weekend. We had some great ones last weekend. This weekend we have Stu Radpavar of Austin's Studio 95 Zumba. She's another Mind, Body, Spirit favorite, and she's back this summer with weekly Zumba classes at Engel Park on the stage, Saturday afternoons. Beginning this Saturday, June 23rd at 3 p.m. Join Stu each week for an invigorating and fun afternoon of Zumba, a fusion of Latin and international music and dance themes create a dynamic, exciting class based on the principle that a workout should be enjoyable and easy to do. The routines will feature aerobic fitness, interval training with a combination of fast and slow rhythms that tone and sculpt the body. You're sure to be back week after week to participate in Sue's fun class, and I can attest to it because I've participated in quite a few. Also this Saturday, UMAC Briarcliff will host a class at Ryder Park at 1:30 p.m. at the Pavilion. UMAC Briarcliff will offer a fun-filled introduction to the martial art of Taekwondo. Learn blocks, kicks, self-defense, and even break a board. This class is open to all those ages 4 years old and up. Also, I am a Taekwondo black belt. I did get my black belt at UMAC, so I can attest to that one too. They're fantastic. Very motivational, and you can really learn about goal setting and making small progress to a larger goal. Mind, Body, Spirit Austin is excited to welcome a local mindfulness expert this weekend for a demonstration of Qigong, Chinese yoga. Come to learn more about this practice and how it can help you attain balance and stability and bring positive improvements to your life. Ben Felcher-Levitt, our own town prosecutor, is also a Qigong expert, and he's got a practice, Recovering Your Way Mindful Body Practice, and he will lead the Qigong practice this Sunday, June 24th at 9:30 a.m. at the Cedar Lane Park Pavilion. So we are hitting 3 of our parks with Mind, Body, Spirit, which is another part of this program, is to learn and see how you can enjoy and take advantage of our public spaces and our parks. You can also check out The Sting, produced by Theater O and performed at Bethany Arts Community on Somerstown Road this Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Go to theatero.org for tickets, which are $10 each. And it's a gender-blind cast with 7th grader Audrey Schnecker playing Johnny Hooker, the Robert Redford role. The show encapsulates the slick and sassy world of the 1930s con with unique staging and fun choreography and music. The play will delight audiences of all ages. The 23rd, which is Saturday, is going to be a great day for community service. You can join OHCC for gravestone cleaning from 9 to 12 at Historic Sparge Cemetery, 181 Revolutionary Road. But you can also sign up to help Green Austin, Riverkeeper, and the Village of Austin stencil Austin storm drains to help keep our stormwater system healthy. There are more than 2,000 storm drains in Austin, and between 10 a.m. and 12 noon this Saturday, the 23rd, you can help get some of them stenciled. Spots are limited, so call the Village DPW to sign up, 914-941-4660. You can probably also contact Riverkeeper or Green Ossining for more information and to register online. I also encourage you to register for the Ossining PTA's Color Run scheduled for Sunday, June 24th. If you have never seen one of these, be prepared to get messy. During your 2-mile run, you will go through splash zones and should end the race sufficiently tie-dyed. Interested? Email bsniffen.opta@gmail.com to register. Proceeds benefit the Ossining PTAs. The race will be held at Ann M. Dorner Middle School with check-in starting at 7:30 a.m. and the race at 9 a.m. A reminder from the Village of Briarcliff, the 2018-19 village tax bills should have been received by residents. If you haven't received a property tax bill, call the Village of Briarcliff tax office at 944-2723. Payments will be accepted on the following schedule without penalty. First installment until July 2nd, 2018, and second installment from December 1st through December 31st, 2018. Sustainable Westchester shared this event this Wednesday, June 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get a free lunch and learn and test drive the 2018 all-electric Nissan Leaf. It's in New Rochelle at Anderson Plaza at the corner of Anderson and LeCount. And that is it for my announcements. Are there any others? We're good. Hearing none, we can go into our special meeting. And our first up is approval of the minutes of the June 13th, 2018 special CDBG work session.
For Resolution A, approval of minutes June 13th, 2018, council has recommended that we table this resolution.
Okay. Is that just because it doesn't indicate that it was a joint meeting?
Correct. It's on the village board's letterhead, identifying the village board, mayor and trustees. And so we're trying to get a little bit more clarification from Victoria Carafelli about whether these need to be adopted tonight, and also to see if we can rework this a little bit to indicate that it was also a town board work session, because I understand that that's how procedurally it happened last week. So we could table it for now, and if we can get more information, or if Maddie and I can try to concoct a solution, the board can come back to it later after the work session, if that works as well.
Okay, that's fine by me. The only thing is I didn't take a motion yet for the approval of the minutes, so I can't table it until I have a motion to approve the minutes. And then we'll table it. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes for June 13, 2018? Okay, and now may I have a motion to table that? I don't know if I have to do all in favor first, and then I have a motion to approve it.
Well, we don't want to.
We don't want to approve it, so I had a motion. Okay, now I'm just taking a motion to table it. Okay. Okay. And yes, and now we can do all in favor.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, so we're tabling approval of the minutes for June 13th so that we can make sure that we get it right for our CDBG submission, which is what is the important part of that meeting. Next up,
Resolution B, contract NYSERDA agreement number 122141 for North State Road Bike Lane Project. Resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign an agreement with the New York State Energy Research and Development Agency, NYSERDA, for a $50,000 contract to design and implement phase 1 of a bike lane project on North State Road.
do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, so just a little bit of a discussion as part of the clean energy communities. I get all clean energy communities certification, and because we hit some of the milestones that we needed to hit by a certain time, we were able to get a grant from NYSERDA for certain types of energy improvements. And as part of the process that we've been undergoing with the MOVO task force, we looked into the possibility of applying for a grant for a bike lane engineering, design, and striping for North State Road, because that seems to be the the easiest place to start a bike lane initiative to connect the village of Ossining with the North County Trailway. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of the project background so everybody is on board with that before we vote to approve it. This is just directly from the grant document that the contract that we're being asked to sign. The town of Ossining aims to increase the bike and walkability of its community through a planning and implementation project. While the downtown village of Ossining and Hudson River waterfront areas offer dense pedestrian-friendly environments with public transportation access to New York City via the Metro North Railroad, several business and community locations throughout the town are lacking in safe bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Repairing these linkages will decrease reliance on cars and provide alternative transportation connectivity. The planning component of this project will include public outreach and traffic studies that will offer bike lane design and improved signage recommendations to create a safe and accessible environment for bicyclists and pedestrians on North State Road, the town's general business district. Wayfinding signage may be necessary to attract recreational cyclists and hikers to North State Road from the nearby North County Trailway. North State Road is an important economic corridor in the region as the town's main commercial hub, drawing visitors from neighboring municipalities for its restaurants, offices, fitness facilities, service stops, and shops. Additionally, the town's comprehensive plan has identified improved signage along North State Road as a goal to enhance this commercial district. The implementation component of this project will include the installation of signage and bike lane striping along North State Road, as well as wayfinding signage as recommended by an engineering design firm. This implementation will further the town's comprehensive plan and improve bikeability along this commercial hub, while furthering the town's long-term goal of increasing bike and pedestrian connectivity community-wide. In addition to providing safe cycling linkages to residential areas, it will also provide a connection between recreational trails in the area and businesses located on North State Road. This project will improve safety for cyclists, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and promote business along this corridor. Under this agreement, the contractor shall implement Component 1. The planning component of this project will include public outreach by the LOGO task force and traffic studies that will offer bike lane design and improved signage recommendations to create a safe and accessible environment for bicyclists and pedestrians on North State Road, the town's general business district. Component 2, the implementation component of this project will include the installation of signage and bike lane striping along North State Road, as well as wayfinding signage as recommended by an engineering design firm. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Fantastic. Sign that. Look forward to getting that started. Okay, next up, I think I am asking for a motion to adjourn into our town hall meeting.
So, second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. So, for our town hall meeting, we are going to start out with Bill Garrison, as summer is officially here this week, and the weather is a strong indication of that. You can imagine that we have seen a lot of activity in our town parks. Particularly, we had a big event at Engle Park on Friday night, and we are so happy the group was able to raise money to help Geo Trivio. But it also pointed out some areas of great weakness in the park, so we took a tour with Superintendent of Parks and Recreation, Bill Garrison, on Monday, as well as our Parks Foreman, Mario Bellardo, to see if we could come up with some solutions to these issues, as well as others that have arisen as a result, we believe, of changing our fee structure for renting out pavilions. So, Bill, did you want to talk to us a little bit about some of these recommendations?
So one of the things that we hear a lot about at the community center is the...
Do you want to stand up?
Sure.
Maybe, or do you want to move the chair? So, yeah, you want to come sit next to these guys?
Sure.
That sounds like a good idea. That sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you.
One of the things that we hear a lot about at the community center is about the pricing of the rentals of the pavilions at the different parks and who pays and who doesn't pay. And it seems that there's a little bit of confusion. So we were discussing the other day about kind of setting the record straight as far as the fees and who should be waived and who shouldn't be waived, and just kind of getting that discussion going forward, and also looking at the one area of the stage down at Lewis Engle Park that we really don't have a fee that's documented for that. So it's kind of something that's always been done, but since I've been here, that's only been 2.5 months, there's been a lot of requests for that stage area.
Well, just for clarification, we do actually have a fee for the stage that we set, which is $100, I think is what we,
It's $100 for the first 2 hours,
Right.
and 50 each additional. It's on the field and facilities application that we share with
right,
everybody.
$100 for the first 2 hours and then 50 for each additional hour. Right now, it's part of our field and facilities application as opposed to our pavilion, which is, I can't remember exactly why we decided, but we decided it was more like originally like a field and facility, so we put it in that category, and part of the issue with that is that that's the application that we share with the village, whereas our pavilion rental, we do not. So what we were considering doing was actually taking the stage and shifting it to the pavilion rental application, because it almost seems like right now, like it's starting to come up more in that way where people are renting it out for events. And then the other thing is, if you recall, that we had, not too long ago, we had spent some time revisiting the fees that we were charging, and we increased the fee for the pavilion rental and then added an hourly fee. And the recommendation at that point was, because we were hoping to see, well, 2 events per day at the pavilions. But as it happens, we believe, at least I think we're hearing from you, Bill, that the new price has been prohibitive, and nobody, because of that hourly addition has been prohibitive. So we have no pavilion rentals where we would normally have many pavilion rentals at this point.
So back in 2017, I guess Cedar Lane was closed, pavilion was closed during 2017. So
Correct.
Airlac and Ryder each had about 20, 22 rentals between May and October. And
Like
some,
this weekend they would have been rented, and
Right.
Ryder would have been rented, and it hasn't been. Don't worry, we can get money from film companies, but probably more than covers it, but.
and there's been no one has rented, there hasn't been a double booking so, for any of the parks, any of the pavilions. So that idea of, oh, we're going to book one for 4 hours, then another group is going to come in for 4 hours, did not occur in 2017 at all.
So we're thinking maybe what we should do is kind of go back. Maybe what we do is we leave the fee. Right now it's $225 for the first 4. Is it for the first
Does
4?
everyone have a copy?
Do you have it right? Did you? I'm sorry, I didn't realize I printed it out. Thank you. Do you see it?
There was a stack of them at one point.
Did they just get left like this and they have
A stack?
Did they pass them up? I mean, we have a prejudice.
Okay. So, okay.
Maybe they're on the chair over there?
Okay, so, okay, let's just, I'm sorry. Right now, we have, okay, so the pavilion rentals are $300 for 4 hours and $50 for each additional hour. And then there's a $75 payment deposit. And, yeah, I'm sorry. Man, that's not right.
I think they're 225.
That's where we, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, yes, they're 225. That's what we had. Maddie, you want,
Yeah, sure.
you want to take us through this, but you need a microphone.
Okay. Yep.
Because Maddie put together this lovely memo that we all got.
Good
and
evening.
Thank you.
Wow, that is really crazy because I saw them since we've been in this room. Good evening. So The town board eventually ended up adopting a fee of $225 for 4 hours for the pavilions, and I believe it's $50 for each additional, or 25? 25 for each additional. So again, $225 for 4 hours, and the idea was to have one rental in the late morning, early afternoon, and then one in the late afternoon, early evening, and then $25 for each additional hour, which does not include the $75 cleanup deposit. Basically, the way that would work is you put a $75 deposit down. If when the park staff comes to take a look, if everything's clean, you get your check back the following month. Right, what else?
That's fine.
And the stage.
And the
fee.
stage,
Oh, so the stage fee is so it's a little bit bifurcated on the fields and facilities application, which is what the village had agreed with the town board to continue. So there's an Ossining resident fee, a nonprofit fee, those are both the same, and then a non-resident fee. So for the stage, it's $100 for a 2-hour rental for either an Ossining resident or a nonprofit, and then $50 for each additional hour. For a non-resident, it's $300 for a 2-hour rental, and then $100 for each additional. And those are the prices that are in place currently.
so again, just to go back to what we have been dealing with, either we, because there wasn't really that much support in the rec, and now more recently more in the rec department, people coming to us, either they go directly to the rec and say, well, can I get a break? I'm a nonprofit. You know, I recently had the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts come to me and say, can I get a break? I'm the Boy Scouts, I'm the Girl Scouts, we do so much for the community. But that was the whole point in setting up these fees and setting up a nonprofit, because all of our nonprofits do a lot for our community. You know, I mean, if you really look at it, it's very difficult to distinguish. So we kind of determined that the only entities that would get a break would be our municipal entities. So in other words, if one of the municipal entities wanted to utilize, if the school district or the village or the town was having an event that we ourselves sponsor, or was one of our committees, that's different, because that's us. We're not going to charge ourselves. We're not going to charge the tax-paying entities back. These other organizations are outside the tax-paying entities, so those would be considered not-for-profits, which they are. So they would be, again, charged the not-for-profit fee for the stage, or the regular fee for the pavilion rentals.
I thought we left the groups up to case by case. I might be mistaken.
For which?
For like scouts and sports teams.
But I mean, if you were to do that, I mean, who's making those? Again, are we have to go to the board every time to make those decisions? Because Bill likes this group, or because Dana likes that group? It doesn't seem equitable. It seems more equitable if we either decide, okay, we're going to give everybody a break, we'll give them all a $25 break because they're not for profit, and that's it, or give nobody a break, because that way everybody is contributing back into the parks, which cost money, and especially depending on the cost, the size of the event, the event could actually cost us more money, because we need to do more setup and we have staff involved beyond just the park ranger, for example. That is a minimal cost, but sometimes people leave the parks much worse off than they found them, and that creates more work for our staff. The next day, we get complaints. Other people can't enjoy the parks. There's a lot of pieces that go along with renting out our parks and pavilions. Does anybody want to comment?
Okay.
The rec board looked at this, and the reason we set up the form, or suggested the form be set up the way it was, is to standardize it so it would be equitable, so that every time there wouldn't have to be someone coming to say, I'm different because of X, and making a petition to have a different price change. So the whole point was to have standard pricing for specific groups, and that's how it ended up. So that's the reasoning behind that. I had a question for you, Bill. Did you do any research on how our pricing compares to other towns?
It's lower.
That's what I thought.
Do we think that part of the issue is that we've had an unusually rainy, cold season that may be impacting people planning outdoor activities?
I think that definitely has. It seems though that the groups that rent are the same groups year after year. They have their annual events, and that's what they do. So the question
And
comes.
some of them haven't re-rented this year
Right,
or
so
that, right?
the question is about the group that comes and like, so what happened to me was a group came and I said, well, here's the fee, and they, well, we haven't been paid in 20 years. So we get that waived. You know, being the new guy, I was like, oh, okay.
And then they came to me and they said, can you waive it? I said, we decided we're not waiving it. So, and I forgot that you guys were very involved in that, and that was with Chris, right? So the rec board was very involved. And that's where it came from. Those recommendations came back to both boards, and that's, I think, where we landed, why there was a not-for-profit fee established for the field rentals specifically. And I don't think anybody's looking to touch that. We're not asking to touch that. We just would like to move the stage onto the pavilion. And do you think that the rec board would also think that that was a wise decision? We can throw it back to the rec board before we make a final decision on this.
I think sort of the discussion was twofold. So the first was moving the stage from the fields and facilities into the pavilion. And then for the pavilion, it was to eliminate the 4-hour cap and bring it back to how it used to be, which is sort of like a dawn to dusk rental.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Not changing, not actually lowering it.
Not changing the fee.
Right, not changing the fee. I mean, the only thing is, I guess, theoretically, we could change it from $225 if we're giving it to somebody for the whole day. And then, you know, if there's a recommendation there, so if maybe somebody didn't want to pay $225 plus another $100 or $200 for the whole day, because that's prohibitively expensive, but $300 isn't. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So maybe come back with a recommendation for what that all-day rate would be, or fee would be. And then, if the board is still good with that, we would, again, maybe we want to rethink the stage. I know one of the issues with the stage has been the size of the crowd. And do we want to, you know, again, at some point it becomes an issue where we're going to have police involved, because the size of the crowd is, you know, we need some sort of monitoring. So if we do need that, then maybe that would kick up the price. And again, I'm not exactly sure how we would know, because somebody could put down 50 people, and this did happen to us last year, and then they had 300 people. So, it's still a little complicated. Any thoughts?
Does he have a list of prices and fees of what goes into it? Do you have a list, or you just kind of jot it down? You don't have...
Well, I have the prices we went over. It's for the pavilions, it's $225, and for the stage, it is $100 for 2 hours.
As long as you're comfortable with that, I just wanted to have...
Well, we have it, we just don't have it, I mean,
Right.
it's online, yeah. Okay. We have all that information, and that's on all the forms.
All right.
So is there a thought of changing the price of the stage rental, or leaving that at a...
How many applications do you have?
It's almost on a weekly basis now that we can, it seems.
That's a hot commodity.
Yeah.
Nobody else has?
Yeah, I don't know how we've been doing with our new picnic rentals, though, our picnic areas. I don't know if we've been getting groups of 20 or more that are signing up, or people are just showing up anyway.
Could I make a suggestion, maybe? So when you talk about the stage rental, keeping it at $150 an hour, perhaps for the stage rental, to sort of account for the fact that there might be more people than you would otherwise expect, change the security deposit from 75 to something greater, so that if it ends up not being a big deal, no matter how many people are there, you don't need the police, everyone's well behaved, they get back their whole check for 150 or whatever it is the board decides. If they leave it, you know, a total disaster, then the price has now basically gone up to $400.
That's a great idea. Like it? Anybody? Okay, so we'll ask for a higher security deposit.
Can we cap the amount of people they leave?
It's just.
Is it
Dan
possible?
said
Yeah,
it's
they don't-
important. You can enforce it. It's hard to enforce and it's a public park, so it's hard to know. If they could say, oh, those people went with me, you know, and you may not. It's hard for us to tell you.
Okay.
Because people, I mean, you know the park better than anybody.
Yeah, I know the park better than, yeah, sometimes thousands of people show up just because they like the place.
Exactly, right, so.
Their entire high school showed up one day.
Is there anything though that triggers that it's a, like a special event that would need approval, more than just a
It used to sort of be up to, and I believe it was Chris Soy's idea to sort of have a box on the form that basically if the superintendent, sort of took a look at it and said, I don't know, this is a little cuspy, by checking that box, that would refer it to the town board for a more formal approval. Sort of leave it up to your discretion.
And we have to make sure, and I think we already did discuss this, that there are sound limits and decibels on the form. That
There are.
There are, if I remember correctly.
Not for the stage, there are for the picnic.
Okay, there needs to be for the stage.
Well, I think it just sort of harkens back to the noise code chapter,
To the
right?
noise code, yeah, just to the noise code.
But I think
it should be written on the-
Chris's preference was
Yes.
also that this board take up the noise code because he did not feel like the language was sufficient for what.
I mean, I'm sure that it could, are you saying it's too loud down there at the stage? I mean, I guess for the neighbor, the one neighbor.
Okay, now we have 188 units with neighbors.
That's
who
true.
are already complaining about 3 Westerly, so.
Okay, but
But
do they
it does
hear?
travel up the hill.
Do they actually hear from people? Because we've never really gotten any complaints. We haven't in the town office
No, it's
gotten
just-
any complaints about noise from the stage, from any of the concerts or anything like that.
No, it's not the concerts. So, occasionally there are rentals and parties that go well into the night, beyond the normal time, like beyond 10 p.m.
Well, the only one that I know of that goes really late is the fire department. Other than that, I don't know of any other one. And we don't usually. As far as I know, nobody's ever rented it past 9.
All right, well, my question is there language on the application saying that there is a sound? I believe that we put it there.
I'm pretty sure there is, but we will look again.
Okay,
Because
yeah, I just
again,
wanted to be
I know there is definitely for the pavilion. Mr. Garrison is saying no, there isn't for the stage because it's part of the field. But I thought that there was something also, but we will take a look at that again and just see if we need to tweak that and maybe just revisit the stage once we move it into the pavilion rental so that it doesn't get mucked up with the other stuff.
Is this going to require any action by the village board, do you think, to re-adopt the fields and facilities application now without the stage component?
It's a question for council. I don't have any idea if it gets deleted and it's not.
I would have to look into it.
Okay.
And I haven't looked into that issue, and I just don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay. A couple of the other issues that came up were just that there was a lot of garbage, and part of that was a problem because our suburban carting that's supposed to be picking up the dumpster at the far end by the spray park and the play area, the picnic areas, apparently the person who's supposed to pick it up on Thursday couldn't find, or pick it up multiple Thursdays, couldn't find the dumpster. So one of the reasons that it was overflowing garbage was because of that. Nevertheless, what we'd like to propose is moving the dumpster to its own little spot that makes it easier for the carter to pick it up from the road and easier for the people who are picking up the garbage, our guys, park ranger or parks guys, to access it from the park side. So it would actually be like a little fenced-in area that would have some kind of a visual block, so you wouldn't see that it was garbage, but that would have a gate that you could access from both sides with a concrete pad and a place for the dumpster. And that would be if you're walking in to a little entrance on your left as you're facing the water. It would be on your left. So where right now the Lewis Engel Memorial flagpole is around that area. We would also propose moving that flagpole because I don't know when that flagpole was originally established, but I know that this is, we need to look into the legal issues of moving it because it is a memorial flagpole.
Yes, my understanding is that the town board dedicated this in the past. I'm not clear as to exactly when that was, so
I see the 80s. Yeah,
we may want to look back and see if we can find the resolution that was adopted to see if there were any specific stipulations or restrictions put on the location of the flagpole. However, if it was by resolution of the former town board, this town board does have the authority, based upon change of circumstances, to, I would think, adopt another resolution authorizing its movement. But we may just want to see if we can find a resolution just for this board's knowledge, if there was a specific reason why in the past it was chosen to be an application.
So that's another thing we want to talk about. And then, so moving the flagpole, moving the dumpsters, and then, say it again? And then, yes, while we're very excited to have, we're going to be moving forward and hopefully be applying for Hudson Valley Greenway grant to do master park plan, which we talked about, that would then be able to be utilized for the community development block grant improvements to the park. So like the big vision for kind of moving the comfort station and re-looking at the park and how it's all laid out. Has a piece to look at upgrading the beach and making it more accessible, and also better for kayak launching, et cetera, and putting a better kayak rack up. But meanwhile, we have an eyesore that currently at Engel Park with the current kayak storage units that I think were from Riverkeeper from many years ago and were utilized for the first few years and then have sort of been left in a bad way. And so we're thinking about a sort of a temporary structure that would not be very expensive to put there instead, so that we could store all of the kayaks that I guess the Village Swim Program or the rec program, that the recreation program uses, as well as some of the private kayaks that had been using those public spots for many years, or renting them, or they were given the right way. I know at least one group of them was, and then there's places where people could store their life preservers and any other exciting kayak paraphernalia, whatever that might be. I guess your paddles, right? So you store your paddles in the lockers, and then right above it, you could lock up your kayak. So we're looking into coming up with a proposal for a kayak rack to go back onto that same area where it currently is, but that could store many more kayaks, and we would fix up the item 4 pad and level it off and clean it up and see if we can get some other kind of something there. Yes?
Right, yeah, so it'll clean it up and be very efficient and look nicer and be a little bit more sturdy. We'll work to try to get a process where we can identify who has their kayaks there, so that if we do need to get them, we have a way to get a hold of them. And so if somebody's got something that's left, so one of the things we really want is to make sure that the kayaks are secure, so that they're not left there and somebody just finds a loose one and go for a joyride. That could be a problem. So if somebody has a kayak that's not secure, we want to be able to get a hold of that person and let them know that it's secure.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was just thinking, do you want to talk a little bit quickly about that new software, just because I was thinking maybe that might be a way that you would keep track of the kayak rentals as well?
So we have a new, right now the Recreation Department uses a program called ActiveNet that does the online registration. There are a number of problems with the ActiveNet. One being that if you're going to register for a program online, it costs you 5.8% as the user to use your credit card to register for a recreation program. There's also some other features that are difficult. It's difficult to use at the back end for the office staff. And it's also, if you ever tried to register online for a program, you'll find it as a user difficult.
Yes.
So we have a new program that we hope is going to get approved this week, and we look to start training folks on it, on our folks in the rec department on July 1st. It's called Community Pass. It's going to offer a lot of advantages. The big one is when you go to register online now, it's going to be a much more friendly experience for you, and you're also going to only be charged 2.6% using your credit card. So it's a big savings onto the residents for registering for programs. Additionally, it's going to be able to provide facility calendars, so the public can go online, look at a pavilion, look at the rental for the pavilion at Ryder Park, and see what dates are available before they would call the rec department or put in an application. So one was thinking of doing a barbecue on July 4th weekend. They could go and see if it's available before they have have to come all the way into the rec department to be told, sorry, it's full, thanks for coming in. The programs also are going to be much easier there'll be links to the programs online, so if you go on and click on for kayak storage, they can click on that and they would get the information of how to do that. If they want to have their kayak stored there, there'll be all the information and what they need to do in order to, you need to get it locked, you need to let us inform you or inform us, you'll be assigned a spot, however we determine how we're going to do that. So we're excited about this. Our goal is to get the fall program up and loaded and ready to be open for registration sometime in mid-August.
Meanwhile, people are still signing up for camp, or where are we?
Camp is
registration?
Registration is closed for camp.
Okay.
We have the Vets Camp and Rider Camp are full, and Claremont Camp was nearly full, and we have increased number of participants in the pre-K and K camp compared to last year.
All right.
So the numbers are very good.
Great. And are we continuing to accept registration for any of our other summer programs, or is that all closed as well?
The summer programs are open. There are programs at the Cedar Lane Art Center that are currently open. An email just went out this week showing those programs for some of the kids' programs. We also have a number of programs and information will be coming out for August. Some after our camp is over, some sports programs and some other week-long programs that will be coming out of the community center.
And you can get more information by dialing 941-3189, which is our community center hotline. Thanks so much, Bill, and I guess we'll just continue, we'll move forward with some of the recommendations and come back to the board with maybe another fee for that, for the stage, as well as the pavilions, to make a recommendation, and then we can see if we can approve something. And we'll check it with about the village, making that change to the fee schedule for the fields and facilities. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. All right, so next up, we have our planner, David Stallman of FP Clark is here to talk to us. We sent him away to come up with some proposals for us for accessory apartment local law, as well as solar energy systems recommendations, because we know that from other communities adopting these, specifically the solar energy systems, that there is interest in our properties, not only for rooftop solar, but also for ground-mounted solar, as well as community solar or solar farms, which would be large-scale ground-mounted solar. So, David, do you want to take us through some of the suggestions that you have here, so that the town can discuss them, and we can come up with some feedback for you, and then hopefully move forward with getting some of this in place?
Sure. You seem like you may be in a different time zone than this side of the room.
You're so far.
You're so far away. Is it 8:20 p.m. there?
It's still 8:20, yeah.
Or
It's 8:21.
would you want me to sit at your table or stay here?
You can move over.
Okay, you want to come on over?
Bye,
So
David.
you
It's been
can
real.
take this?
Yeah, you can have this one. Here, you can leave that with Christy, you can have this.
Is there a stand for that? I'll bring the stand over. Thanks. So you all have the draft local law?
Yes,
Okay. Is this on? Testing.
we do all have it.
Okay, good.
Do you not have it? I have an extra copy.
Yeah, I would like
It'll be a lot easier if everybody has a copy.
Okay, we're going to start with
Accessory apartments?
accessory apartments.
Okay.
This is solar. This is solar.
Look at you. I didn't get that. Thank you.
You need it? Oh, I've got it. Thanks. Thanks very much. That's one of each
This
local
is
law.
solar. Well, I just brought the zoning map in case it would be helpful for the board to look at it when we were talking about where we're recommending we zone have the.
So on?
So we're on?
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
We're not up to that yet, though, right?
Right.
We're starting with accessory permits, okay?
Okay, so just for a little background, this was proposed accessory apartment legislation was proposed, or zoning was proposed some years back.
Back 2012.
2012. Now, in the comment, in the changes that you made, were those made to the 2012 draft? Or,
In the 2012 draft?
yeah, like the new changes were, in other words, is this the 2012? Is this pretty much just what it was from 2012, or was it, did you change it and tweak it?
Tweaked it.
Okay. All right, so if you could just take us through a little bit of the highlights of
Sure.
this, that would be great.
So, as you know, currently accessory apartments are regulated by Chapter 50, accessory dwelling units of the town code. And for some reason, they're called accessory dwelling units instead of accessory apartments. I have nothing to do with drafting of all that. So, currently, you can have an accessory apartment by going to the zoning board of appeals and getting a special permit, and it's got to be in the main dwelling. It can't be in a detached accessory building, like a garage or something like that, public detached garage, something like that. So what this does, this local law does, is it takes the accessory apartment use, and it would no longer be a separate chapter of the code, Chapter 50. It would now be in the zoning law, which is what I believe it should be. And instead of the zoning board of appeals issuing a special permit, the planning board will issue a conditional use permit, which is basically very similar. Now we have the planning board. Instead of calling these accessory dwelling units, they're called accessory apartments. It looks like a lot is going on here, but there's not much more than that actually being done. So if you look in the middle of page 2, the definition of accessory dwelling unit gets changed to accessory apartment, and it says a dwelling unit within an existing single-family home or within a detached accessory building on a single-family lot, which is subordinate to a permitted principal one-family dwelling unit in terms of size, location, and appearance, and which provides complete housekeeping facilities for one family, including independent cooking, bathroom, and sleeping facilities.
So, the significant change is that you can now have it in a garage, for example. That had, right, you need to have, plumbing and heating and et cetera.
Right, right. Another garage, in a garage, in a carriage house, in an outbuilding that might be a studio now or something like that.
Right, okay.
So, it looks like there's a lot going on if you walk through the pages here, but chapter got changed to section, dwelling got changed to apartment. The first substantive change going forward is at the top of page 4. And this was the case back in 2012, and I think we touched on it when we last talked about this. The maximum size of an accessory apartment would go from 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet. But in any event, the area of the accessory apartment shall also not exceed 33% of the habitable floor area of the building on the lot. So if you had a larger home, you could go up to 1,200 square feet, as long as that doesn't exceed 1/3, 33% of the habitable floor area of the principal building on the lot. So it's a little
If you had a
more
large
dense.
garage next to a 3,600 square foot plus home,
Right.
then you could have a 1,200 square foot living
Or if it were,
unit, accessory apartment,
you could have it inside your home as well.
or inside your home, right?
So there's not much more on this page. There's nothing of substance on this page that's changed.
It's not changing, but just to point out that there should be a maximum of 2 bedrooms in the apartment. So that is something for us to think about.
It's got to be subordinate.
There has to, right, there has to be off-street parking. It has to be subordinate. What does that mean? What were you?
It's an accessory use So it shouldn't be competing with the principal use of the home. So it needs to be small.
So you're not, this prevents it becoming a two-family house.
Exactly.
essentially.
Thank you.
So it's just to make sure that it's an apartment and a house.
Right,
Right.
exactly right. And as it says in F on page
I
4,
like that.
either the main dwelling or the accessory apartment must be owner occupied as a principal residence. So if you had an elderly couple in a great big house, they might create an apartment for themselves, rent out the bulk of the house to a young family or something, and that would be a good way for them to stay in their house in terms of financial wherewithal.
And that's the impetus for thinking about this, is we're thinking about how communities are changing. Certainly our aging population is growing in all of our communities, and looking for ways to make it easier for people to age in place is a benefit to us as a community. It ends up costing less for everybody, and often people can age more happily when they get to stay in their home or in their community. Yeah. No, I meant that was awesome. So it's an opportunity.
I know in some communities they've adopted legislation to have accessory apartments act as affordable housing options. And I believe there are some incentives if you create an accessory or have an accessory apartment and rent it at a certain income level. So would we be considering anything like that going forward?
It's not in here, but I don't know that one precludes the other. I have no idea.
Well, there aren't that many accessory apartments,
Mm.
and we're requiring that 10% of projects, I think over 10 dwellings have an affordable housing component. So, I'm not sure if I said that right. So the way to get more affordable housing is not really through this, I don't think.
Right.
We could do it, but it wouldn't make a dent.
Right, it's just not enough apartments.
Yeah, I would leave it out of this.
Okay.
Because the number of accessory apartments we're getting in the town is not that great.
Okay.
So there are a couple other things worth noting here. But go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, just,
Go ahead.
again, on F, I really like the fact that it must be owner occupied, because the Airbnb and such are buying up properties and, making accessory properties and renting them out. So I really like that there has to be an owner on this.
I mean, that's other legislation we can also consider, which is,
Should be considered, yes.
we need to consider, which is legislation to, regulate Airbnbs and those sorts of things.
Yep, so that would be another question. You could have an owner-occupied house and somebody uses their accessory apartment as an Airbnb. So we don't have any legislation prohibiting that or monitoring that, I guess. And I'm not suggesting that you may not want to, but I mean, you'd still, even with an Airbnb, you still have an owner-occupied.
Yeah, that's
And,
what-
and when they rent it, it's still an owner-occupied facility. The owner just may not be there at the time, if you're talking about a house or something. So I'm not sure that owner-occupied and Airbnb are,
In this case, it specifically says that it must be owner-occupied as a principal residence.
Right.
With Airbnb, it might not be.
right, it might not be, but if you're buying it as a rental property that you're just consistently renting out.
And it's an owner occupied.
Yeah, but a lot, but some people do live in their house and then rent out either a room or the house on a weekend or a week that they're not, that would still be owner occupied.
Okay, so you want to continue?
Sure.
Okay.
So I think item 2 at the bottom of page 4 is worth noting. It says garage space may not be used for an accessory dwelling unit. I'll change that to apartment, unless required parking on the lot can otherwise be provided. Moving forward,
It might be worth it to read I, but to also.
Aye, okay.
Since-
I, renewal permit. Prior to the issuance of any renewal permit, let's go up one above that.
Just the fact that it's inspected yearly,
Mhm.
is I think is an
Right.
important thing.
Right. Prior to the issuance of any renewal permit, the building inspector or his designee shall inspect all areas of the building housing the accessory apartment to determine compliance with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. No renewal permit shall be issued until the building inspector or his designee determines full compliance with said laws, rules, and regulations.
Does it say how often it has to be?
Annually.
Perfect.
Moving on to the next page. This talks about application materials, and we refer to section 200-50 instead of enumerating the materials.
And again, this is for a conditional use permit, which is what the planning board would then be empowered to grant.
Right. And at the bottom of the page, it says the term of an initial conditional use permit shall be 1 year. Renewal shall be for 3 years. Applications for renewal of conditional use permit shall be made at least 90 days prior to the expiration of the permit being renewed. And that's the way it currently is, 1 year, 3 years. So there's no change there.
So it's inspected every year? Sorry. So it's inspected every year, but your renewal is every 3 years?
Right.
And we'll get to the inspection.
Inspections are down the road. Did I miss it? Where does it say the 1 year? Do you, I know it does say it, I just missed it. Renewal permit.
Page 4.
I don't think that's where it says annually.
I saw it somewhere.
It says it somewhere.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, we can put it in.
No,
No, it does.
It's
It
in
does.
reinspection.
Inspection, yeah, it's.
Yeah, reinspection E, what page? 7.
Yeah. That's what it says.
Okay. Item 2 on page 6, I think, is worth reading. And this is currently what it says with a couple of just editorial non-substantive changes. It is the town's intent that neighborhoods zoned as single-family retain their single-family character. The town recognizes that there may come a time when the number of accessory apartments in a zoned single-family neighborhood will adversely affect the character thereof. The planning board shall therefore deny a conditional use permit for an accessory apartment should it find that the number of such units, including the one proposed, will adversely affect the character of the zoned single-family neighborhood. And then at the bottom of the page, it says, the planning board shall deny an accessory apartment conditional use permit if 3 other such permits or approvals for accessory apartments have been issued within a radius of 500 feet from the property lines of the lot containing the proposed accessory apartment. So you combine those two, and you won't have a dense massing of accessory apartments.
And the next one says that.
Top of the page.
Yeah.
Should I read that as well? As a condition to issuance of an accessory apartment conditional use permit, the planning board may impose such conditions as deemed proper and necessary upon the accessory apartment, principal single-family dwelling, and/or the property to preserve the character of the neighborhood and/or the health, safety, and welfare of the neighboring residences.
The next one is about the reinspection, annual reinspection.
Right. And then at the bottom of the page, we have a condition or a provision regarding the sale of the dwelling and renewal of the conditional use permit. In the event that a lot with a valid conditional use permit for an accessory apartment is sold, the conditional use permit shall lapse unless within 90 days after the transfer of title, the new owner shall apply for renewal under this chapter of the previous conditional use permit. If such application is timely made, the new owner shall not be deemed in violation of this chapter so long as the renewal application is pursued with due diligence. If the renewal application is granted, the new conditional use permit shall run 3 years from the date of transfer of title. If after transfer of title, a renewal application shall not be made within 90 days, any application thereafter shall be treated as an initial application, and any permit issued pursuant to said application shall be for a period of 1 year.
Just wanted to go back to the reinspection where it says that if there's non-compliance with the violations of the terms of the chapter, in the discretion of the building inspector, any condition which does propose a hazard to health or blah, 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 The main structure and other members, the building inspector shall report such findings in writing to the planning board, and the planning board can schedule a public hearing with due notice to determine whether the permit should be revoked based upon such non-compliance, violations, or other conditions. So if somebody's not complying with whatever, then the planning board has the authority after a public hearing to revoke the permit, the conditional use permit. That was important to note. And then, again, the sale, as we mentioned.
No orders shall be permissible in lieu of the principal dwelling unit or the accessory apartment. And then with respect to pre-existing units that don't have approvals, it says all owners of accessory apartments who have not previously obtained special permits for such accessory apartments located on their lot shall apply to the planning board for a conditional use permit within 6 months following the effective date of this chapter. If the application is not submitted within, say, a 6-month period, the owner of an accessory apartment shall not be deemed.
The application is so made.
I'm sorry, is so made within, say, a 6-month period, the owner of the accessory apartment shall not be deemed in violation of this chapter. If application to the planning board is not made within said 6-month period, the owner of the accessory apartment shall be deemed in violation of this chapter and shall be subject to penalties provided.
How would the new owners know, how would the new owners know how to do F or G? How would they know the 90 days? Is there something that's going to be somewhere where they would know to apply? They know that it's either a legal accessory apartment or not?
Well, that provision exists right now. I don't know if they have received any information regarding that or not, frankly. Can certainly make.
Or welcome.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I buy this house, there's an accessory apartment, and I'm using it as an accessory apartment, or I'm just using it as part of my house. How would I know?
That's a good question. There's a lot in the code that people don't know
Yeah.
about unless they read the code.
Exactly.
We can try to work out some way to make that known.
The seller.
Good question.
Yeah.
Can you have the seller,
Yeah.
onus on the seller to disclose that?
No, I don't, I mean, if they're on their way out, I don't think.
If you're becoming a landlord, I think it's your responsibility to know what the rules and regulations of the
Yeah,
town are.
but you might, if you're moving and you have an existing tenant there, you might not even think twice about just, you're assuming the lease. So I don't know that,
When you're buying, but when you're buying a house, though, you have to make sure that everything is.
well, yeah, but there's no, all you have to do is, if you buy a house and there's a tenant there, you just assume the lease and you can do that stuff. That has nothing to do with doing.
But I'm saying that when, before you close, that you need to make sure that all your.
Your lawyer would be, like,
Right,
they're-
they'd have find.
Christie has the answer.
Conditional use
Well,
permit. Okay.
I mean, if you're buying an accessory property with an accessory unit, there is some obligation on the buyer to, some people do go and look at the building department file beforehand to see what's in there and what's required. Unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, but there is also an onus on property owners to know what's in the zoning code and how that applies to them and what their obligations are, because the conversation you're having right now really can't be the obligation of the town board with respect to every specific property owner.
No, absolutely. So I don't think we're suggesting that. I think it's just that if, look, ignorance of a law doesn't absolve you from responsibility to it, but it is sort of a unique situation.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, all it says is that if you don't do it within the 90 days, it's treated as a new application, right?
Right.
So if they come in and say, they, hat in hand, planning board, we didn't realize, we bought this house, it was a 90-day period, we didn't know we had to do it within 90 days, here we are. The planning board just looks at it again, and then it's just a year instead of 3 years.
Right.
But it doesn't preclude them, it doesn't look like it penalizes them in any way unless the building inspector finds out about it and issues a violation, in which case then they're going to know about it and they're going to have to make an application to the planning board anyway. And, I mean, I did have a question. Sorry, David, about the
Sorry.
pre-existing units.
Yes.
Should there, if this provision was in there before,
Yes,
should there really be any pre-existing units at this point?
there may be.
But they should have made an application within 6 months.
Yes.
If this provision, because the way I'm reading it, it existed previously in the previous iteration, but you were just supposed to make the application to the zoning board.
Right.
So all of those should have been cured by now,
They should have.
okay. So,
I don't know if they have been.
right, I just don't know if that makes any difference now, because are we basically starting from scratch and giving everyone a clean slate who hasn't legalized it up until now?
Right.
We shouldn't. We shouldn't. We should.
I mean, I'm just asking if that's,
Yeah.
if that's the implication, the way I read it, that's the implication of this section. And so I don't know if the town board wants
I mean, maybe you could clarify to say that if it hadn't been registered by whenever this law, the original accessory apartment.
in which, I mean, this has been in effect, did you say 2012, David?
No.
No.
In 2012, there was a proposal to amend the accessory apartment chapter, and that chapter has been around since 1999.
Okay, so the pre-existing, as it currently exists without these changes, would be accessory apartments from before 1999.
Yes.
And so if this 6-month language, as it existed in that, would have applied until maybe 2000.
I think, I'm guessing that the thought is that people would come out from hiding with this new, if they had someone in.
If they're not going to get in trouble.
Some sort of amnesty.
Yes, it's almost like amnesty, but also, remember, there's nothing in place for an apartment that's in a garage or other, so that would not have been cured prior to this, right? So if somebody has something illegally set up in a separate dwelling, a separate structure, detached structure.
So you want to give people the opportunity
This would
to
be an
come out
opportunity
and
to
say-
come out, yes.
So that there can be more oversight and the
Correct.
building inspector can inspect it and make sure. Okay, I understand. I just wanted to make sure we
Okay.
were all on the same page about what the implications of that section was.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna go back to G, where it says, borders are prohibited and no borders shall be permissible in either the principal dwelling or the accessory apartment. I mean, does that apply to Airbnb? Yeah, I mean, is that gonna be applicable to people renting it as on a day or weekly basis?
We don't have it, we don't have it in place right now, that's all we're saying.
Well, I'm just saying, it almost says no.
Right.
I think what this is saying is that this is not supposed to be a ordinance. So it's supposed to be principal dwelling, an accessory dwelling, and for a long-term rental.
Okay, so it's saying no short-term lease.
I have a question. Excuse me. Is this so thick? Is that the book?
Yes,
Look.
well, this is a number of chapters. This is about 8 chapters.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, can we make a booklet or something to when a person purchased one of these properties? And if you had a booklet, it had, give it to them, because you will know when they're purchasing. It doesn't matter if you send from the tax office, but they know they have an idea of what's going on.
Go back to council.
I mean, it's something to consider that a lot of information is available online. You just want to be careful that you're not making it your obligation to notify people about what their obligations are and that it's their responsibility to know. I mean, obviously.
We can do things that are friendly.
Sure, absolutely. Being more informative and, if it comes to the town's attention, either because someone goes to the building department and says, I'm thinking about buying this property, I'd like to look at the file, make sure there are no violations, that everything's legal, which I mean, if someone's buying a single-family home with an accessory unit, I don't think that's uncommon to do, assuming you want to know the answer. But I don't think it's a bad idea to just have more information than less, but, you know, it can't be on the town to go seeking out when these sales are happening in order to provide that knowledge.
But there's one other thing. Everybody don't have computers to go online, and everybody's not computer literate. So you can't, I just don't understand how it's going. You be ready to punish them for not knowing what's on there, and they didn't know because you didn't tell them. Now, oh, it's online. Sure, it's online. How do I get online?
Library, that's all. Library. You can go anywhere and look at them.
When you buy a new house, you need to make sure all your CBOs are in place. It would seem to me like that would, something in the record would come up, again, through your lawyers and through the closing process that would indicate that there was a conditional use permit attached to the house that you're buying that has some restrictions in it. So theoretically, your lawyer is going to tell you, oh, there's this conditional use permit. I mean,
The zoning code is available online, but its existence is, like I said, presumed to be within the knowledge of the individual property owners. And so even if you can't, you don't know how to access that online, there are other ways of finding that information. Going to the building department, asking them, you know, what does my file say? What do I have to do? I'm just saying that it shouldn't and it can't be the town's responsibility to affirmatively tell every purchaser what their obligations are.
I mean, I'd be willing to consider looking into a welcome wagon alert or communication from one of the offices. If any of our offices do that already, where we would include some information about some steps that you might want to take, which could include consulting with the building department to make sure that there are no restrictions on your property that you just purchased, that you should need to know about, you know, something along those lines. But again, you know, we're going on, you could have options to go online, blah, 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 but that's, you know, kind of a bigger project, and I don't think it's something that we should include in this that's mandated on us, again, as Christy was suggesting. We don't want to be, it's not incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody has all this information. That doesn't mean we can't do something nice and friendly. We can. It's just not going to be incumbent upon us to do so. So let's continue.
I have one more question, sorry. Can there be language in G where it says borders on how we define what a border is? Because there's like the line that's crossed out, I think it's about the tourist home or rooming house or boarding house, I think is more descriptive than just having a sentence with nothing.
Sure, absolutely. And then penalties for offenses is the same as it's been substantively, and then J is just sort of a provision that makes sure that if there are any conflicts between the provisions of this section and section 200-49, which is regarding conditional use permits, this section controls.
One other thing, by bringing this into the zoning code, it comes within the appeal jurisdiction of the zoning board of appeals. Yes. So if the building inspector interprets a provision of this code, of this section to say, well, you're not in compliance, or you don't meet the requirements, or something that could presumably or potentially aggrieve a property owner, with that, when this wasn't in the zoning code, property owners did not have the remedy of appealing to the zoning board, but the zoning board's authority, appellate authority, is within the jurisdiction of the zoning code. So it provides an appellate remedy where if someone doesn't agree with the building inspector's interpretation, they can go to the zoning board and have the zoning board separately look at the issue. And it does really streamline the process. And then if they're aggrieved by the zoning board, then they would bring an Article 78 proceeding. But because it's a use and there are bulk requirements and the like, it does make sense to have it be within the zoning code.
And just as a note, I have an email here from John Hamilton, dated March 28th of this year, and in part of it, it says, I suggested the law be placed into the zoning code instead of the current separate law. My rationale for this is there can be times when the proposed apartment could be 10 square feet shy of the minimum requirement, for example, or something similar. Under the current law, you cannot deviate from the specifications. If it was placed in the zoning code, a variance could be requested and the applicant would have to prove the hardship. So, and I think John is generally in favor of this.
Okay. In terms of next steps, is there anything that looms large for anybody in this that of concern?
I mean, just procedurally, you would have to notice a public hearing on the local law.
In terms of noticing, do we have to, is there an area or anything like that that we have to, like, send the entire town or anything like that?
Well, we have notification requirements.
Right. But I don't think you would have to send individual mailings to every property in the town. But I mean, we can look at that and double check that, and if there are any certain areas that the town board thinks would be affected. You can also look and see which properties currently have accessory apartments, which should be relatively easy to do if they've registered, because the building department would have record of them. But I don't know that it's necessarily, all it does is change who you're making the application to, right, David? It doesn't change the timing or the frequency with which they have to get inspected and go in for renewals.
Right.
So presumably, if they're doing their due diligence, they would go in after 90 days, less than 3 years, and say, I need to get my renewal. And John Hamilton would say, well, you're going to the planning board now because you need to get a conditional use permit. But we can look at that and talk about if there are any specific areas that should be noticed. But generally, there are code requirements for notice that includes publication, and putting it on the town's website. I mean, that's not required, but that's what the town does.
Okay. Great. So we want to move to solar code?
Sure. So I should mention that I consulted with the very latest version of the model local law, the NYSERDA model local law. When you go out and look at the provisions that communities have, especially in Westchester, either you find very little in their codes regarding solar, or you find over and over regulations based upon a prior model local law. So this is really cutting edge.
Yes.
And does everybody have a copy of this?
Yes.
So I think the first thing that we should do is read the definition of the different tiers. There are a number of definitions, but the ones regarding the different tiers are the most important in terms of understanding how this whole thing is put together. So if you go to page 3, it will be the second definition, solar energy system. The components and subsystems required to convert, and this is a definition, a solar energy system is the components and subsystems required to convert solar energy into electric energy suitable for use. The term includes, but is not limited to, solar panels and solar energy equipment. The area of the solar energy system includes all the land inside the perimeter of the solar energy system and extends to any interconnection equipment. A solar energy system is classified as a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 solar energy system as follows. So tier 1 would be roof-mounted solar energy systems and building integrated solar energy systems. There aren't that many of those, but there will be more in the future, where the panels are really integrated into the building materials as opposed to being on the roof. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 would be solar energy systems which are ground-mounted, where the total surface area of all solar panels on the lot does not exceed 900 square feet. So that's roughly 30 by, not roughly, it's 30 by 30. If you can imagine 3 parking spaces square, that's what we're talking about in terms of ground-mounted solar energy system. And where the solar energy system does not generate more than 110% of the electricity consumed on the site over the previous 12-month period. So these are relatively small ground-mounted solar energy systems. Tier 3 are systems that are not tier 1, they're not on the roof, they're not integrated into the building, and they're not relatively small ground-mounted. And a solar farm is one kind of a tier 3 solar energy system. So these are larger systems, ground-mounted. Okay. So if you turn to page 4, we're listing a lot of, this is authority under the Municipal Home Rule Law of New York State, statement of purpose. We have 12 reasons why this is good stuff. Turn to page 5, see applicability. The requirements of this section shall apply to all solar energy systems permitted, installed, or modified in the town after the effective date of this section, excluding general maintenance and repair. 2, the solar energy systems constructed or installed prior to the effective date of this section shall not be required to meet the requirements of this section. 3, modifications to an existing solar energy system that increase the solar energy system area by more than 5% of the original area, exclusive of fencing, shall be subject to this section. So if someone wants to expand by 5% or more than 5%, I should say. And then the next is just you have to meet all these different principles. D2 is worth reading, I think. Approval authorities in the town are encouraged to condition their approval of proposed developments on sites adjacent to solar energy systems so as to protect the access of such systems to sufficient sunlight so as to remain economically feasible over time.
Can you explain that, because I don't understand how you can approve development of a solar energy system adjacent to a solar energy system. That's kind of what it says, from my understanding.
No.
I thought it meant
it's
apartment building next to it that would give you that.
Right. So approval authorities in the town are encouraged to condition their approval of proposed developments.
Gotcha. I was taking developments as the solar energy system.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So it basically, try to avoid casting shadows on solar energy systems.
Okay.
That would make it not work that well.
I know, I just didn't understand. Okay, got it.
Under safety, you have to meet codes, you have to be kept in good working order. Storage batteries, if they are part of the system, have to be disposed of properly. They've got to be installed by a qualified solar energy installer. Item 5, I think, is worth reading. Tier 2 and Tier 3 solar energy systems shall be screened as much as possible and practical from adjoining lots and street rights of way through the use of architectural features, earthworms, landscaping, fencing, or other screening which will harmonize with the character of the property and surrounding area. The proposed screening shall not, however, interfere with the normal operation of the solar collectors. 7, you can't have a solar energy system within any required buffer area. 8, utility lines shall be placed underground as permitted by the certain utility. 9, solar energy systems and equipment shall, to the extent reasonably possible, use materials, colors, and textures that blend the facility into the existing environment. 10, mechanical equipment, including any structure for storage batteries, shall be enclosed by a 7-foot-high fence as required by the National Electric Code with a self-locking gate. Okay. Then Item E at the bottom of 6 says, Tier 1, which again, roof-mounted building integrated systems, shall be permitted in all the zoning districts of the town, subject to the issuance of a building permit on the following conditions. So for roof-mounted systems, on pitch roofs, I'm reading 1 in brackets, the panel shall be mounted with a maximum distance of 8 inches between the roof surface and the highest edge of the system. Solar panels on pitch roofs shall be installed parallel to the roof surface. Solar panels on pitch roofs shall not extend higher than the highest point of the roof surface. Solar panels on flat roofs shall not extend above the top of the surrounding parapet or more than 24 inches above the surface of the roof, whichever is higher. The panels shall have anti-reflective coatings. And they shall comply with the height limitations in table 3 here. So if we go to the back of this, we have 3 tables. Tables 1, 2, and 3. And 3 are height requirements. So if we look at Tier 1 roof-mounted solar energy system, in the one-family residence districts, it can't be higher than 2 feet above the roof. Same thing in the MF, MFI, and the NC, 2 feet above the roof.
How does that work? It says solar panels on pitch roofs will be mounted with a maximum distance of 8 inches.
Right, but that's the mounting height, and then they can't.
So it's 8 inches above the roof.
Right.
Here's your 8 inches.
Right.
Yeah.
And your right hand is the panel.
Right, my right is the panel.
And you say you want to tilt that. You can't go higher than 2 feet.
I thought it had to be parallel.
It's got to be mounted parallel.
Be installed parallel to the roof surface.
Yes.
You say some of them have ability to follow the sun?
Yeah. This is, this is pretty much right out of the model.
Right, I just don't understand. That's fine.
Well, I just wanted to one question. Who puts these up? Those people, whoever you hire to put this up. I'm not going up there to check out 8 inches or whatever. Who checks that out?
John Hamilton. It'd be his responsibility. And, I mean, he can look at the brackets while they're on the ground. He doesn't have to actually go on the roof with the guys.
Okay.
So now we're on F, I think, page 7. Permitting requirements for Tier 2 systems. And again, those are ground-mounted, less than 900 square feet in size. Anti-reflective coatings, lot size. The lot on which the Tier 2 solar energy system is placed shall meet the minimum lot size requirements in Table 1 period.
Can we just go back? So
Yeah.
again, Tier 2,
Absolutely.
we're suggesting that it be permanent and also, just the same as Tier 1, right? F, it says be permanent in all the zoning districts in the town as accessory structures. So you could have a ground mounted solar in any place, as long as it.
As long as you meet the minimum lot size in the zoning district. And
Or an accessory structure.
Is it,
So it's like considered the same as if I wanted to put a shed or a garage?
yes. And you don't have to, just because something is in the model law,
Right.
you don't necessarily have to agree with it. But it's
I'm just
what
asking the
I
question
started-
if that makes sense, to have the same restriction as if you had an accessory, another accessory structure. And I don't know if that was put in there for safety or if it's put in there because.
Well, is
But are
twice
you
the
suggesting
standard
that
setback
not have a
or
restriction?
recommendation?
I just don't
So
know
it
if
would
it's
be
based
twice
on
what the shed could be?
structures. So
Yes.
But I think
It's
that's
in
not,
Yeah.
So-
It's got to meet these requirements.
All right. In the setback requirements, it has to be twice the standard setback, which would be twice as far from the property line as a shed would be.
That's in Table 2. So in Table 1, you've got to have the minimum lot size in the zoning district, so you can't have an undersized lot. And you've got to be able to fit this in with twice the standard setback. Side yard, rear yard, front yard, well, they're not allowed.
So now why would you want it to be
farther from the house.
Farther from the property.
From the
From
property line, from
The
this
setback is
property.
from the
Okay, got
other
it,
people's
got
property.
it, got it, okay, so, got it. Sorry. Okay. I mean,
It would seem to me that these make sense because it is something that impacts other people in the area. So I think it's good to have those.
I'm just want to have the conversation, that's all.
Yeah, even with the anti-reflective coatings, you know, it's not like looking at a garage. It's not like looking at lawn. We're trying to fit these in to be as unobtrusive as possible, so the extra setback is worthwhile. So I think we're at the bottom of page 7. Actually, at the top of page 8. Number 5, location tier 2 solar energy system shall only be installed in side or rear yards, nothing in the front. Screening and visibility. Tier 2 solar energy system shall have views from adjacent properties minimized to the extent reasonably practical.
I mean, again, you think that you have these shade, you know, you can only put up things that are so high, at which point you get rid of the point of the solar system, right? In other words, you don't want to shade it.
Right.
So you're blocking it from the neighbors, but then you're shading it to defeat the purpose of the system.
Well, it says to the extent reasonably practical.
Right.
So
If you can prove that if I put this fence up like this, it's going to shade the thing, and that's the only place I have my property to put it, then presumably,
it's a balancing act.
right, okay.
B, solar energy equipment shall be located in a manner so as to reasonably avoid or minimize the blockage of views from surrounding properties and shading the property to the north while still providing adequate solar access. And then we have a reference in C to our chapter 183, we have a tree.
So can you talk about that a little bit? How does it work with tree removal? That basically, just
You have to apply the planning board for a tree removal permit.
right?
And abide by the standards in that chapter, including the replacement of 50% of the aggregate caliber of the trees you're taking down, which we're starting to use at the planning board just very recently. Oh, and Kathy, I think, wrote a memo regarding tree bank and where in the town, if someone can't replace all the trees they're supposed to replace on site, where in the town they can plant, or how much they want to pay into a tree bank fund. So that part of the whole thing needs to be created by the town board.
Well, the good news is,
that we're applying for another grant for tree inventory for the rest of the town, so hopefully we'll know just exactly where we need to plant those trees.
Okay, then we move on to tier 3 systems. And again, these are larger systems, including
here's where I brought this in. The map.
solar farms.
Right, so you had suggested specific areas.
Well, if you look at the table on the back here,
This is one family residence, and then ORB, ORE, and GE zoning districts.
right, so the BE zoning district is the GE property. Lots of space for conceivably even a solar farm. So we're saying in the BE district you get these 2 acres, they've got more than 2 acres. In the ORB, ORE, which is the Central Westchester Business Park and the vacant 13-acre property at the top of the hill behind that, you would need 2 acres there to have in a larger system, tier 3 system. In the NC, GB, GB1, multifamily and multifamily in districts, there's really no room for those larger systems, so we're not permitted. And in a one-family residence district, which would be any one-family residence district from R5 to R40, you need 2 acres for a larger system. And I think that makes sense. So there, on Mary Knoll, for example, on lots of larger properties in the town, we have to get a conditional use permit from the planning board and site plan approval, and consider the local water system.
How does the conservation easement go along with solar uses? Is there a...
Oh, you know Mary Knoll?
Yeah.
I don't know what that conservation easement is exactly. They say that you can't do anything. I don't know what that, I'd be speculating to, you know.
And my other question, has the EAC weighed in? I mean, what's the environmental impact to wildlife and/or has anybody determined that?
Solar farms? Well, I think that,
Isn't there something about bees, like where they can, I heard that, I thought there was
Beekeeping underneath it?
Yeah, you can do bee-friendly plant stuff underneath it, specifically, like you can make sure, I thought that was, is that in, I thought that was in the
there is something.
I didn't see it in here. Maybe I just missed it.
You're also still very early on in this process. This is just the very first iteration of this. You know, you're going to have to hold a public hearing if the board does decide it wants to pursue this in some form or another. There'll be an ample opportunity for comments by the public and the other land use and environmental boards and consultants that you can do. You can start soliciting now if you wait till the public hearing process. So just because it hasn't been done yet certainly doesn't mean it can't be done long before this gets to an approval stage.
Yeah, it should be.
I just wanted to include it.
Yeah, there is something, I'll look that up, because there is something about a wildlife seed mix.
Yeah, and I think that there's something specific that, because that, I think that issue has come up.
Yes.
Specifically, again, you're getting rid of habitats if you're clear cutting areas to put in panels, but there's also, I mean, just for us, there's upsides to it too. Right now, we're not creating more kids in school. So, you might clear cut it to put a house also. And that's also permitted.
Right. So I think we're more or less at H on page 8.
Okay.
And this is an enumeration of what would be needed to get what a complete site plan application would be comprised of. And then moving on to I on page 9. And again, this is for a tier 3 system, conditional use permit. In addition to the other conditional use standards in this chapter, the following conditional use permit standards shall apply. Lot size, tier 3 solar energy system is placed, property in which it's placed shall meet the lot size requirements in table 1. Setbacks, height, screening, visibility are similar to tier 2. Tier 3, on page 10, item B toward the top, tier 3 solar energy systems shall be required to conduct a visual assessment of the visual impacts of the solar energy system on public roadways and adjacent properties. At a minimum, a line of sight profile analysis shall be provided. Depending upon the scope and potential significance of the visual impacts, additional impact analyses, including, for example, a digital viewshed report shall be submitted, required to be submitted by the applicant. I think we're talking about solar farms. They've got to submit a screening and landscaping plan to show adequate measures, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, driveway signage, not terribly interesting. Reflective coatings. 8, lighting of the solar energy system shall be limited to that minimally required for safety and operational purposes, reasonably shielded. Again, tree removal is subject to tree protection chapter. Security. A cash deposit, bond, or other form of security in an amount and form acceptable to the town attorney and town engineer shall be submitted to the town. And this has to be sufficient to ensure the good faith performance of the terms and conditions of the permit, and shall also provide for the removal of the solar energy system and restoration of the lot subsequent to removal. And it talks about how much penalty or it's guaranteed. And this has to do primarily with abandonment. So
Yeah, when I went to the Association of Towns meeting, they were saying this is a very important part to have.
Absolutely.
And that they should have a bond before they install it to be able to make sure it's taken care of.
right. So
And that's what this whole section is.
This whole section is?
Yes.
security, abandonment, and 12 is decommissioning. 13 is owner or operator changes, or what happens in that event.
Inspector or Dave.
And then J, at the top of page 13, is regarding the New York State Unified Solar Permit, which you can have or not have. And essentially what this is a way for you to allow the streamlining of smaller systems. And John Hamilton would then process them instead of going to the plan. You can go with this New York State Unified Solar Permit or not. There's a I don't think so. No, I don't think they have much of anything in there.
Okay.
So there's a 5-page form here.
Which many municipalities have now.
They're getting there. You know, I'm surprised at how little I found in research, but it's a way of streamlining the process. So you can either want to use that or not.
So if we decide to use this, then we don't have the planning board overseeing the screening?
That's correct. Or there could be some variation, but the way the model law is set up right now is either you use it or you don't use it. There's nothing that combines the two.
This is for what now? This is for everything.
It's
I'm pretty sure.
no, it's not just for roof mounted. If you look at 13's paragraph 2, in the middle of the page, my page, this is intended for Tier 1 and Tier 2 solar energy systems, small scale less than 25 kilowatts. You could have it just for roof mounted. Although for roof mounted, what did we say? We said
Okay, well, we can review this that's what we're trying to see.
for roof mounted, you don't go to the planning board anyway.
Okay. Great, you just go to the
Just to the building inspector. So on bottom of page 13, all of page 14, top of the page, really up to the end. The rest of this is just a series of amendments establishing this as an accessory use in the various zoning districts of the town. And that's the whole thing. Sure.
All right, so I mean, I think it would be helpful for us to send this around, probably to get some feedback from the planning board and from the EAC earlier rather than later.
So you want to do that before you consider, you want to get their input and then maybe have another work session
That
to
would be
discuss it and see if anything needs to be changed or amended?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can certainly do a memo.
Okay.
So just planning board and EAC? Well, we will have to get input from certain, and there are legal requirements if we're going to adopt the local law, referrals that would have to be made, but if it's just for the town board's internal consideration of, you know, what your land use boards and environmental boards think about this. Just whoever, which boards or individuals you think should be notified now.
So let's start with those two, and then if we have any additional comments, we'll have them before we send it out. Otherwise, great, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Bertie.
Hopefully it wasn't too much work, because hopefully NYSERDA did a lot of the work for you. And we're grateful, and we'll continue our conversation. So, we don't have time? We have to leave? What time do we have to leave? 9:15? 9:30? 9:15 or 9:30?
Let's just take a few minutes.
Well, we have 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes. Let's just use the last 10 minutes to quickly talk about the charitable trust issue, just because I wanted to bring you up to speed. It's a lengthy conversation, but I feel like I'm not.
Is that it?
Good. I think there's no matter.
Good night, all.
Good night, thanks so much,
You're
David.
welcome.
Good night.
Take care.
So the charitable trust legislation that was established by New York State to basically allow another avenue for people to, for individuals, families, property owners that are not commercial property owners, to itemize their deductions and deduct more than $10,000 on their income taxes. Was put into place by the state, by New York State, at the end of session. Sorry. As part of the budget. And what it does is it gives municipalities the option to adopt local laws that would allow us to establish a charitable trust in which we could accept money and 95% accept donations to the charitable trust, and 95% of the amount that is donated into that charitable trust could go to offset the tax obligations of the person making the donation into the charitable trust. And that would be done in the form of a voucher, which would be issued by the charitable trust entity to the taxing jurisdiction, presumably to the town of Austin, receiver of taxes, or one of the village entities. So because we collect taxes on behalf of school districts, and the next collection that we are responsible for is the school district collection in September, this is timely for us if in fact school districts are interested in setting up these charitable trusts. And if so, we would have to act quickly to allow that to happen. In conversations with other, we do know that a couple of villages and one town village, like I believe Scarsdale, the village of Rybrook, I believe.
Rybrook, and I think the town of, I think it's the town of Rye was having a public hearing tonight on it.
Oh, town of Rye may have had a public hearing, but I believe village of Scarsdale actually adopted.
They absolutely did.
Town village of Scarsdale adopted
They had previously adopted, well, it's a two-step
Legislation.
process.
Right.
So first, by resolution, you have to set up the charitable fund, and then you have to adopt a local law after going through the public hearing process to establish the tax credit, which is the 95% or whatever lesser percentage the municipality may decide can be then applied to the outstanding taxes that are owed.
And essentially the 95%, sorry Tom, was set up in an effort to allow the taxing jurisdictions or the collection or authority to have some kind of administrative fee covered. So if in fact I were to owe $100 on my property tax, and I went and made a $100 donation to the charitable fund of that particular tax. So say it was the school, I owed $100 in school taxes. $95 could be applied to my school tax obligation. I'd still have to pay $5 more to cover my taxes. I would have already paid $100, but the $5 I donated to the fund would be to pay the administrative costs of dealing with all of that. So if in fact I wanted to get the full deduction of the full $100 that I owe in taxes, I would have to make a donation of what, $106 or something like that, so that 95% of the $106 could then be applied to offset my tax obligation. The IRS has put out some.
They put out a notice acknowledging or recognizing that this legislation and similar legislation has been passed throughout the country, and pretty much indicating that they do intend to weigh in on whether they think this is acceptable to allow deductions in excess of the $10,000 limit that the new tax law put on state and local property tax deductions, because charitable deductions are still unlimited.
How would this work if you're using, if your taxes are being paid through your mortgage? Yeah, through escrow.
They haven't promulgated regulations yet, but they do intend to figure out some way to do that. But I don't think that they've come up with a guidance document yet for the escrow.
The way it's looking right now is it's going to be very difficult because these tax service entities do provide these services nationally, and administratively it's going to be difficult on a lot of different levels. So one of the options that is being toyed with is that the payment would still come out of escrow. The charitable contribution would be made. If the taxpayer opted to elect for this avenue, and that's something that's important that I think we should point out, is that this is something that New York State has said that municipalities are allowed to do, and so the town and other municipalities like Scarsdale and certain other ones that have already adopted it are considering whether to follow the procedures to allow it to be done within Ossining. There is still a long way to go, and this IRS notice can be read to suggest that it is ultimately going to be determined to not be a way to get around the deduction. We don't know what's going to happen. There could be litigation. So just because this avenue is available does not mean that the town or any other municipality or taxing jurisdiction is encouraging it or saying that it's appropriate for for property owners. And every property owner should consult a tax professional looking specifically at their situation in order to determine if it's appropriate for them. Just because it's available through the town, because New York State has promulgated legislation to allow it, doesn't mean that the town is encouraging it.
But I think that, I'm guessing that my board colleagues would agree that we would do anything we could to make it easier for taxpayers to pay less, to not have to pay more, right? So the idea would be if we had enough interest in taking the chance, because the understanding, the belief is that this is going to be in litigation for many years, so it's not going to even be clear. However, on the flip side, it could come out on the wrong side where whatever the decision was by the courts could be in favor of, say the IRS says, yeah, we're not going to accept that as, you can't make a charitable contribution that then counts for your taxes. Those two things don't go together. So if that were what they decided, and then the courts agreed to that, and this was 3 years down the road, and somebody had been paying into the charitable trust, and the town had been making the payment off, right? Even besides the 5%, there might then be penalties and other things that got wrapped up against them for their income taxes because they had made these
deductions that ended up not applying, so they actually owed more than they paid.
Right. So there could be that. You could end up having to pay more in this 5%. There's lots of pieces of this that aren't clear. I will tell you that I've reached out to our 2 school districts, and the Ossining School District superintendent has told me that they are waiting for the IRS to make a determination before they do. which would lead me to believe that that's not necessarily going to happen in time for the first half election.
The IRS hasn't indicated exactly when that will happen. There are some rumblings, it could be at the end of August, but no one really knows.
So if we wanted to, we could try to put something in place so that we could be set and ready if in fact they decided to, because that's what I'm hearing from other supervisors. If the school district said that they want to do it, then okay, obviously that's the biggest portion of your taxes. Then we'll go ahead with it. Nobody seems to think at this point in time it's advisable because there's still so much out there, but we're not advising anybody one way or the other. That's just what I'm just saying anecdotally I've been hearing. And, but again, we would like to be able to hit the ground running if in fact any school district, Austin or Briarcliff. And Briarcliff hasn't directly responded to my inquiries, but I'm hoping, and I believe that the village, I know, has already gone out with their collection. Briarcliff, as I just mentioned earlier in the announcements, and they haven't put anything out, and I don't believe that they care to. That doesn't impact us. The town doesn't collect for the village of Briarcliff, but I do believe that the school district is kind of following suit with what the village is doing. I think that they're also feeling that without the IRS, that there's not enough buy-in. One of the things that we had discussed is it might be valuable to do some kind of informal polling to find out or ask community residents and property owners specifically to weigh in as to if there's something that they would want to take advantage of. So I'm just going to go out on camera to ask if there is anybody out there who is chomping at the bit for the town to put this in place because you want to take advantage of it. Please do take the time to call my office at 762-6001 or email me at dlevenberg@townofboston.com. I think it would be helpful to hear if there are a lot of people out there who think that this is something that we should do, if it's worth the time and effort and money that's going to go into administering this, or no. That's where I stand. I don't know where my colleagues stand on this, if you guys would like to weigh in.
I mean, that sounds good.
I'd err on the side of if it wasn't too expensive to get it set, but don't hit the button to go. So that we could, if it was right.
There's so many complications. Who's going to be collecting for the charitable trust? How the voucher system would work to say, indicate that this has been paid. Then do we deduct that from the warrant, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of pieces of this.
I think it's worth it to have the conversations early and not actually put it in place.
Well, a lot of that also has to do with the school districts, because one of the issues that we've been hearing about is that the school districts may not have the infrastructure to set up a system for accepting these charitable donations. And so would there be a mechanism either through an IMA with the town so that the town could be the collecting agent for these charitable contributions, which would then make it administratively easier for the receiver of taxes to accept that voucher that's being issued by the town already, instead of a property owner having to go to 3 different municipalities in order to make these charitable contributions and then submit vouchers all to the town tax receiver's office. You also, a big issue is potential fraud in that respect. So there's like Dana said, there's just so many issues. It's like every time we talk about this, 10 new things come up, and it's just, you just never could have even thought of. So we're working on it. The Association of Towns has been a great asset. Holly Perlowitz, the tax receiver, has been very involved in trying to learn as much about this as possible. But it would be difficult with the the system that they have now for paying electronically, and whether that software could be adapted to account for this. Also the escrow accounts with mortgage holders and banks and whatnot. So there's just a lot.
And then there's also a provision to return the money from the charitable trust if in fact. And there's a lot of complications for the
And
town.
that may be internally inconsistent, because then there's a separate provision that says that it's supposed to be an unrestricted donation. So if you're saying you're allowed to have it back, but then you're also saying, well, you're not allowed to put a restriction on what we do with it other than what's in the law, which this has to be used for charitable purposes. it's tough to parse.
So anyway, I think that's a good update from them for everybody, and hopefully, I feel like I have a sense of where you want to go, which is to continue to try to do whatever we can to make it possible if it's worth it to everybody, bottom line. Okay. All right, fantastic. So with that, are we adjourning into executive session? A short exec?
Very briefly,
Okay.
for advice of counsel and litigation.
I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for advice of counsel and litigation.
So move second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. And I want to know if there's any last minute things that I had to tell you. I don't think so. I will see everybody, and we will see everybody next week, Tuesday night, the 26th, at the courthouse facility. Have a great week, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you Friday night at our concert series kickoff.